Hey everyone, welcome to the College Lead YouTube channel, where I talk about how to prepare for and apply to college. Today I will be covering how to write the Common App activity descriptions. If you are a senior in high school applying to college right now, then this video is just for you. I will be answering all of your questions from what the activity description is, what it's for, why it's important, and also how to write the description, all in this video. So be sure to watch from the very beginning all the way through the end. And if there's a particular section you're interested in, just check out the timestamps in the description below. And before we get started, I would love it if you could give this video a like and also subscribe for more content like this. That really helps me to continue making videos like these to guide you through the college application process. So with that, let's get started. Before we dive into the details, let me first show you where to find the Common App activity section. So now I am in the Common Application. So if you navigate to the Common App here, go to Activities, and you'll come to this section right here. So you'll have the option to say whether you have any activities you wish to support. Obviously you will have some, and this is where the description will be. So let's say that you have a community service volunteering activity. You can put your leadership position as a volunteer or a leader, and then you can also write your organization's name in 100 characters. And then this is the key part. You have 150 characters to describe this activity, including what you accomplished and any recognitions that you received in the process as well. So 150 characters might not sound like a lot, and I would agree with you, which is why this is so challenging. Your goal is to condense years or months or hours of work into 150 characters to show admission officers what you have done and accomplished. So there is a specific way that you can do that, and I will show you in the rest of this video. But for now, take a look at some other information you'll have to provide. Your participation grade levels, the timing of your participation, hours spent per week, weeks spent per year, and whether you intend to participate in a similar activity in college. I will say, as a small comment, that there is really no pressure to answer yes or no. Just be genuine and just be honest with what activities you would like to continue and what activities you would not like to continue. It's very common in college, even in terms of the number of classes that you take, the numbers will decrease. For instance, in high school, you might find yourself taking 7 or 8 classes every semester, whereas in college, taking 5 classes is considered a lot, and you'll find yourself taking sometimes 3 classes or just 4 classes every year. That's not saying that the amount of work that you have to do has decreased. It just means that each one of those classes has so much material, maybe 2 of your high school classes worth of material. I would say this is also similar with extracurricular activities as well. You'll find that in college you won't be doing 10 extracurricular activities or even 7. You may be involved in just 2 or 3, but involved in those at a very deep level. So it's totally fine if you want to say no, you don't plan to participate in a similar activity in college. That being said, if it is true that you intend to continue all of your activities in college, you can feel free to say yes. But I just want to say, in terms of whether this increases your chances of admission or not, really there's no evidence for that as far as I know of, so just be genuine to yourself in this case. What's really going to move the needle on whether you'll get into a college or not is how you frame or write this 150 character description, and that's what this video is for. Okay, so now that we know where the activity description is, let's hop back and let me tell you how you can maximize the utility you get out of these 150 characters. So like I mentioned earlier, your challenge is to condense years of work into just 150 characters. And I'll explain how to do that all here. I will say that a lot of the advice I'll give you will also be applicable if you're writing a resume or anything similar to that, because you will face a similar challenge there when you'll have to condense years of work and countless hours of toil into just 2 bullet points or 4 different lines. Okay, so best practices, what you should do and should not do when you are writing the description. So to start off with, I recommend structuring your response to include 2 main sections. The first section, or part, will be what you did in an activity. Wow, that's a tongue twister. In an activity. The first part will cover what you need to do in an activity, and the second will be to talk about the significance or impact of what you did. I want to emphasize the importance of the second part, the significance or impact of what you did. You should assume that admission officers do not know what every single activity out there in the world is. So your job is to communicate your success in your extracurricular activities or the amount of work that you did in your extracurricular activities in this description here. So let's say that you are part of a very competitive sport in your county. Admission officers likely will not know how competitive that is. So to demonstrate how selective it is, you can say something along the lines of the acceptance rate. For instance, 5% of applicants selected to participate in this particular sport. And that's something that can describe how difficult it is to get into an activity or to do an activity that you've done. I'll dive into a more specific example in just a second. So, something like this should work in terms of conveying both what you did and also the significance or impact of what you did. So, responsible for leading the chemistry club, taught new members lessons on important topics and helped improve their grades. Breaking this down, the part on what you did will be responsible for leading the chemistry club, taught new members lessons on important topics. Now, the significance or impact of what you did is helped to improve their grades. So you can see that if you mention the significance or impact of what you did, that makes the part on what you did all the more stronger, or all the stronger. I can't English right now. But you can see how it just emphasizes and makes it more impressive what you did, because there was a positive result that happened because of your work. In general, here are 4 best practices you want to stick with as you write these descriptions. First is to be as concise as possible. This might be obvious, but again, you have 150 characters, so if you can shorten any words and save a character here and there, go for it. The next is to be as specific as possible. Next, use consistent formatting. If you're separating each one of your phrases with a comma, do that for all of your descriptions. If you have a period at the end of each of your descriptions, do that for all of them. Don't just have the top 3 descriptions with a period at the end. Remember to keep the formatting consistent. It just comes off as more professional and also makes it much easier to read. Lastly, avoid special formatting. You can use the ampersand sign, I believe, but I'm afraid that any sort of characters like a Chinese character or a foreign language character may not always show up in the Common App. So try to stick with, in general, English and limit the amount of special formatting that you use. Let's apply these best practices to the sample description that we had earlier. So here's the description that we had earlier. And actually, let me just move myself to the side so we can still see the words. I might have to minimize my camera, actually, when the next part comes out. So I'll move my camera here instead. So here was the example that we used earlier. Responsible for leading the chemistry club, taught new members lessons on important topics and helped to improve their grades. How can we make this more concise and more specific? Feel free to pause the video right now and just try writing it out. It'll be a really good exercise. Okay, so hopefully now you have a sample response, and let's see what I was able to come up with. And I'm not saying that that's the end-all be-all correct answer, because in writing these descriptions, it's more of an art rather than a science. There's no single correct answer. So here is a suggested way of how you could make this description stronger, and I'm going to actually make my video much smaller, and I'll go up in the corner here so I'm not blocking any of the words. Okay, cool. So here is a sample response. Founded school's first ever chem club, created organic chemistry lessons, taught 10 new members, and improved their grades by a letter. Specifically, how I applied those best practices is here. So, being as concise as possible. Instead of saying responsible for leading X, Y, and Z, just say led X, Y, Z. That will save you a ton of characters. Next, be as specific as possible. Any chance that you have to quantify the number of students you taught, the number of lessons you prepared, anything like that, include the number. So, taught new members important topics versus taught 10 students organic chemistry. Not just important topics, define what they are, and not just any new members, you taught 10 new members. That's a lot, include it. Even if it's 5 or 3, include that. The next is to use consistent formatting. So you can notice in the description, and I'll go backwards a little bit, So you can see, but each verb statement is separated by a semicolon. My favorite sort of separator is using a semicolon, because sometimes you might find yourself using a comma within each verb statement, so having a semicolon just really helps to separate each one of those. That being said, you can also use a comma if that works best for your descriptions, because again, this is more of an art rather than a science. So actually back here, you can see that I used a semicolon here, and also here to separate, and also here to separate each one of the verb statements. The last thing I will mention is that there's no need to make this a complete sentence. You can see that I'm starting out with the verb, and that's totally fine. Sometimes you can even use abbreviations. Instead of chemistry, say chem instead, or instead of biology, use bio. That's totally fine. So just to tie all of those loose ends together, I found this quote online and I really love it. So here, it is my ambition to say in 10 sentences what others say in a book. It is also your goal in the Comment app to say what you've accomplished in 3 or 4 years in 150 characters. This is all a key to unlocking how to communicate effectively in a very concise manner. And I hate to be the bringer of this news, but you will only find yourself having to do more and more of this condensing and using these different tricks the more you progress in your education and your career. Because a lot of these lessons will apply to resume writing that you'll be doing a lot when you're looking for a job or even an internship. So to guide you through the process of writing those descriptions, let me show you one of my favorite resources. And I know this is a little zoomed out, so here, hopefully you can see. So here I am at Harvard's website. It's for their Office of Career Services. Essentially, it's an organization that really helps students at Harvard to secure jobs and internships. But the part that is relevant for you will be scrolling down to here, and there is a resume and cover letter publication. I will leave the link to this in the description below, so don't worry about having to look at the URL and copy that. So keep in mind that this guide is geared towards college students, but at the same time, there's a lot of takeaways that you can apply to your activity descriptions and also your resume writing in the future. So a lot of these resume tips, for instance, be specific rather than general, and use the active rather than passive voice. Absolutely use that. In a resume, you might not want to abbreviate, but you can abbreviate in a Common App description. So again, take all of these with a grain of salt. What I do want you to focus on, though, is this. This is a gold mine. And even though I graduated from Harvard last year, I still go back to this page and use it in my resume whenever I update it. So let's say that you have a leadership activity and you're writing a description for it. If you find yourself using the word organized over and over and over again, maybe you take a look at this list and see if you can use any one of these words that imply leadership. So you can say earned, produced, strengthened, supervised, executed, consolidated. There's so many different options, and using a variety of verbs will not only help to make your descriptions more specific to that activity, but also help you come across as more professional and less repetitive. So here is a bucket for leadership verbs, another bucket for communication, another one for research, another one for technical, teaching, quantitative, creative, helping, organizational, all of this. And this is on page 4 of this guide. So I will, again, link this PDF in the description below. And feel free to check it out and use this as you write your essay. One of my favorite things to do is actually just to print this page out and just tape it on the wall behind me that I can use as a reference as I'm writing. And this might also be useful in your essays as well. So that's just a really cool tool or resource I wanted to share with you. So back to the presentation. Now I will cover a few examples along with suggested descriptions just to get you started. And again, please keep in mind that writing these descriptions is very much more of an art rather than a science. Everyone's activities is different. So take away lessons and patterns from this presentation, but in the end, don't worry if your descriptions look something very different from these examples, because all of your experiences are different and there's different ways to capture that information. Let's say that you started a Latin tutoring service. This is a possible description you could write for it. Taught Latin 2 to 12 middle school students, created lesson plans individually tailored to each, helped them improve their letter by a grade. So you can see here, we do have consistent formatting. Each verb statement is separated by a semicolon. We also have the section on what you did, which is taught Latin 2 to 12 middle school students, created lesson plans individually tailored to each. And the important part is we also showed the significance or impact of the work, which is here, helped them improve their letter by a grade. And it's fine if it's just an estimate. Let's say that out of those 11 middle school students, let's say that out of those 12 middle school students, 11 of them went up from a C to a B. That's fine. You can just generalize it here. The main point is you just want to convey that the program that you started and the lessons that you created were very effective in helping the students learn and achieve their goals. Here's another example. Let's say that you were on the mock trial team back in high school. I'm old. Let's say you are on the mock trial team in high school. Here is a sample description you could write for that. Selected to be a witness, 1 time, in parentheses, and attorney, 2 times. Organized 8 practice trials with local DAs. Team placed 3rd in county's high school mock trial championship. So you can see here how there are abbreviations, but they're all common abbreviations. For instance, DA is commonly known as district attorney, HS, high school. That all makes sense, and that's totally fine. I will say that you can notice that the last section, team placed 3rd in county's mock trial championships, that doesn't start with the verb. It doesn't always need to start with the verb, especially if it's in terms of impact, and you can express it in more of a concise way here. So don't worry too much about that. Again, this is more of an art rather than science. But if it can start with a verb, selected X, Y, and Z, organized this, then yes, try to keep that as consistent as possible. Again, I can't emphasize this enough, but writing these descriptions is sometimes more of an art, and it's not a science. So here's an example of a little bit more of an unusual description, and this is actually one that I have adapted from one of my own activity descriptions. Let's say that you are a flutist in a youth orchestra. You could say something like this: selected through a competitive audition in 8th grade. First flute for Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf, Debussy's La Mer, piccolo for Ravel's Daphnis et Chloe. So, from my perspective as a musician, the reason why I wrote this to be a little bit less traditional is because there are a few points that I really wanted to emphasize. First is that I was selected through a competitive audition process in 8th grade. I was the youngest member in the youth orchestra at that time, and that's an accomplishment, so I wanted to emphasize that. So you can list that here. And if I can, I would have included the acceptance rate, or how competitive it was. For instance, selected out of 20 flutists to be the flutist in this youth orchestra. But I don't have that number, so it's fine to just say selected through a competitive audition. That gets across the same point. Next is I wanted to highlight that in the youth orchestra, I was also given the opportunity to play a few major roles, namely in these pieces that have huge flute and piccolo solos. So Prokofiev's Peter and the Wolf, huge flute solo. Debussy's La Mer, another huge flute solo. Ravel's Daphnis et Chloe has a huge flute solo, but also a huge piccolo solo as well. So that's why I wanted to emphasize those. So again, descriptions are very personal and specific to you. In the end, write whatever makes sense. So that concludes a short talk on how to write the description for your activities in the Common application. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments and I'll generally get back to you within a day or 2. Also, don't forget to join my Slack channel, and you can join that by going to my website. I'll leave the URL below, but it's essentially mycollegelead.com. And if you join my Slack channel, you'll be joining a couple hundred other students where we answer each other's questions, share resources and information, and I'm very active there as well, so you can also DM me questions. With that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful, and if it was, please give this video a thumbs up and also subscribe for more content like this. Good luck on your college application process. Hang in there.